Or could you build these businesses and not sell them? Because this is, I've had this discussion with many people, and a lot of people are like, no, that's not an integral part of it. It's not a cornerstone of it. And other people are like, no, absolutely. If you're building businesses, well, I guess what I've heard is if you're building businesses to sell them, then yes, you are an entrepreneur. But does it necessarily mean you're not if that's not your intention?
No, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not. I think, to me, the way I think of it is, I don't know, I'm always thinking in hybrids. Like, I'm taking things and I mash them up together.
Well, that's the whole experience, right?
So for me, it's about what kind of portfolio of revenue sources do you want to have.
Right.
And so if you have a business that you can literally let it run itself, and you can still make money from it, and you want to keep that in your portfolio, then maybe you want to do that. What kind of profit margin is it throwing off? What kind of cash is it throwing off? And do you want to continue to let it grow? And are you going to be able to keep those people?
Right.
Because this all comes down to how complicated is the business model, how important is it to have the people that are running it have enough, corporate knowledge, company information that they can do this without you, and they're going to stay.
Right.
So how much do you have to pay them, and so how much are you going to have left over? And is it worth your headache? Is it worth the risk? Is somebody going to sue you in this business? And then it wouldn't be worth to have it on the side. So there's so many questions that you have to ask yourself, and then have other things going on at the same time.
So, but do you consider that model that's an entrepreneur? Because I've heard that argument too, where if you have a business that you set up, but the intention is for it to run itself, so that you can get into other things and create a more diverse portfolio, but not necessarily sell it. Just like maybe you have 5 things like that. That's considered entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I think
you're an entrepreneur if you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of lean a little bit towards what Seth Godin says. Like, if you're starting a company or multiple companies that have other people involved, and the business can survive without you being there day to day, you're an entrepreneur.
Gotcha.
If you have to be there or everything is going to fall apart, you're a freelancer. So I think that's the distinction between.
Well, if it's your own company. So another guy I spoke to, he said there are people that own their own job, but that's not being an entrepreneur. So say you own your own business, but you have to work there every day, or if you're a freelancer, say you're like, I was a freelance musician for a while, and I didn't have a boss, I collected money from all kinds of different sources that, I had to do what my clients asked me to do, but I was self-employed.
Right.
But he was the gentleman I was asking about this said, no, that I wouldn't consider that being an entrepreneur. That means you own your job, but you have to be there. You have to do it. What's the scalability of it? And there wasn't really any. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty clear delineation.
Scalability is very important when it comes to entrepreneurship. If that's kind of the path that you, if you wanted to grow.
Whether you were scaling the same business or scaling the process. And passing it along to multiple different projects, like you said, creating a portfolio. But you would say that selling the business is not necessarily inherent in being.
It's not, but I'll tell you what it does for you.
Go, let's hear it.
It gives you an experience.
Besides money.
Besides money, it gives you an experience that you can't really understand unless you go through it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like having a baby. It's like, oh, you don't have any children?
Right.
Oh, this is what it's going to be like. Oh, why didn't you tell me these other 18 million things?
And you don't know until you're in the trenches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so selling a business absolutely, helps you understand that, and I think that makes.
What if you sell a business but you don't really want to? Is that entrepreneurial?
Well, I think honestly,
because I've been there.
if you sell a business and you don't really want to, that's a very painful thing.
I mean, it was actually very liberating. But when you build certain things, and it all goes down to your ability to walk away from it. Where that's right. For me, things were growing at a fast pace, and certain things they were just tying me down. And they didn't operate well. Staffing was definitely an issue. Management was an issue. Corporate information was an issue. And I was just like, life is going to be easier without this. Right. And it was great. It was just like so liberating.
You did want to, you just didn't.
Well, the dream would have been to keep it going. I felt that there was value, and this is something that I've been working on a lot lately, is when you've built something that you believe there's value to it, but there's whatever reasons, there's issues in the translation of that, to potential clients or whoever, and it starts to peter away. Like, you know, you don't really want to let it go. You have a lot of faith in it. You know, it would be good for yourself. It would be good for your community.
Right.
It would be good for people. But there's a disconnect, largely which I take the blame for. You know, I don't think it was like the market or this or that.
Right.
It was
this
just
might come back to working in your business versus on your business. Because if you take enough time to step back and find the white space in what is going on, then you can think about alternative solutions to the things you're having problems with.
In hindsight, now I'm like, oh, I could have just done 1, 2, 3,
exactly.
and it'd probably still be there.
And that's the white space that you really need to be able to get
but
to that point.
at the time, it just wasn't an option. So that happens, and like you said, it's and I don't regret the experience. You know, I learned a ton from that.
Exactly, right?
It's amazing, right? Like you can't buy that.
And that's what I'm saying.
School can't give it to you.
No. You have to kind of go through selling your company in order to understand what that really means and who the players are and what their role is.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned so much. I mean, thank God for good attorneys and.
Yep.
You know,
you need those guys too. Yeah, definitely.
He helped me a lot.
Yeah. So did you go from your Wall Street gig straight to Butterbeans?
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about that process where you went from, you have the vision, obviously you had to have some money to get it off the ground. Hopefully Wall Street treated you okay. And just really getting the vision off the ground, and give us some detail about what Butterbeans exactly is, like what service you provided, and then the scope of it, and then what happened from there.
So basically, I left Moody's in February of 2008, and I had actually got laid off, which was really good for me because I did get a nice severance, 6 months. Nice. And that was really a big part of the seed capital that would allow me
need a little catalyst, right?
Start the company.
Every fire needs a spark.
And so I basically didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. The idea, I remember, was just I want to own my own business.
Yeah,
like, that's where I was in my head.
Right.
And I researched a couple of ideas. I still have a couple of ideas from that time that I think would still be good. But started to research what do I want to do. I ended up going on a yoga retreat with like my whole family, but with a local yoga studio in Brooklyn. We went down to Costa Rica, and one of the women that was there became my future partner. Her name is
great.
Felicia, one of my dear friends today. She lives in Portland, Oregon today. And so she was very different from me in terms of she was vegetarian, she had food allergies, she had a really restrictive diet, and I eat everything and grew up on a farm. She started to learn about, growing things, when she was much older, out of high school, but cared a lot about it. And she was a teacher and I was a business person. So we had really different backgrounds, but very similar concerns about the food that our children were eating. And I started, at the time my son was 1.5, and I had just started to, he was eating regular food at that point, and I started to ask people that were, his friends' parents, what do you feed your kids for dinner? And I was really surprised that everybody would say, oh, well, my child doesn't eat any vegetables or anything green. And they just only eat pasta. And I was like,
pasta and butter.
That's not true. I mean, children will eat food if you put it in front of them.
Absolutely.
And I was really, but it was the majority of the people who were saying, yeah, we feed them at 6, put them to bed, and then we actually eat real food
this was
at 8 o'clock.
a local study? This was a Brooklyn study?
This was a Brooklyn study, and I was very scared for all of the children. And so I was like, well, we should do something about this.
Yeah.
And so Felicia had always had this dream of teaching children about food and cooking and so on and so forth. So to make a long story short, we decided to launch a company together. And after brainstorming and talking about our stories and our visions, we settled on the name Butterbeans because that was my experience when I was a kid. We would pick butter beans and then we would sit around the table at night and we would shell those butter beans. And it
have
takes
the same
45 minutes to shell a pound of butter beans.
We would have buckets and we'd be sitting around my grandfather's living room and he'd have a baseball game on and snap.
We were watching the same game, I'm sure.
Yeah,
so shelling our butter beans, and they had a scale.
Were your family Braves fans?
Yes, absolutely. They were Braves fans. They had the Braves baseball cap
from
on.
the same cloth. This is so funny.
The whole nine.
Yeah.
And so they would put them back on the scales. We would, and we would, at the time, I think it was $2.75 for a pound of shelled butter beans. And we would write it on a little piece of tape and put it on the bag and go to the next one.
Yeah.
So that visual of just sitting around the table with your family, shelling butter beans, was very warming. It had the word butter in it, had the word beans in it, so we went with butter beans. And it is super.
No, and I think it's really
Everybody loves
important when you're developing a business. Like, you want your identity in it somehow. It has to feed your soul
Exactly.
to an extent. I mean, there are a lot of people that do businesses that don't, but I wonder what existence is like for them.
Right, exactly.
You know?
No,
Like,
I
for
know.
me, it's always been things I've been passionate about and figured out how to monetize it and made the negotiation where I don't hate it at the end of the day. You
kind
know,
of back into the business model sometimes and the revenue model sometimes when you're not sure what it is when you're starting. And I think a lot of people do that. But yeah, I think if you do come across something that makes a lot of money, you do kind of have to figure out and back up what is the purpose.
Yeah.
What's my big why here? So anyway,
do you know that Simon Sinek TED Talk?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That was life-changing for me.
Yeah, I know.
It was things that I always knew, but it just never had been said so eloquently.
Right, exactly.
You know, and I was like, oh, now I can talk about this better. Because before I'd be like, I like butter beans. You know,
right,
it's just
and
like so odd.
Oh my gosh, that's what I start with all my clients. I'm like, what's your 30-second pitch? And I get a 10-minute, discussion about this is kind of what I do, this is what I do, this is what I want to do, this is what I did last year. So
focus.
Yes, getting to that is sometimes tricky, but possible. Yeah. So anyway, we launched in 2008, and we decided in May we're going to.
And what was the service exactly? So where did you provide service?
Okay,
who were your clients?
So our initial product was literally packing lunch for parents. Mm-hmm. So we bought
locally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We bought like 2,500 Tiffins. If you're familiar with a Tiffin lunchbox.
Okay.
It is a 3-tiered Indian lunchbox.
All right.
So, and it came in these metal containers, and it had into a little orange case that had a little zipper on it.
Okay.
And we started also, we entered the NYU business plan competition at the same time.
Oh, cool.
So we wrote our business plan and started our business at the same time. I was working full time on this.
That's another good catalyst. Yeah, very cool.
And so we basically asked everybody we knew, do you know anybody with, people in private school? Mm-hmm. And a few people made some introductions, and we managed to get into 6 schools that said, we will allow you to sell your service to our parents.
DOE, you're not cracking that nut.
That's not going to happen. That's a whole separate. That's a whole separate show.
2 shows, actually.
Yes. That's a movement,
awesome.
Really.
Yeah, I'd love to. We'll wait a couple of years. We'll get into that. That's awesome.
So basically, but charter schools are definitely on the table. So we definitely had charter school clients. So that was great.
Cool.
But what we did was at that time we had basically our pilot. Okay, so we said, let us pack the lunch for your child, and we had them fill out a Google form and tell us their name, their grade, their class, their food allergies, their food preferences, blah blah blah. And we created menus, we individualized and customized everything, we labeled it all. We had 2 for each child so that we could drop one off one day, pick up the dirty dishes the next day with a replacement and wash them the night before.
And where were you producing? Where was your production facility?
The Gowanus. We had a 3rd shift.
Got that good water, huh?
3rd shift.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Very small kitchen, probably no bigger than this room that we're sitting in right here, from here to there.
Yeah.
And our refrigerator was like one small glass reach in the basement, which we had to exit the front door and walk down outside to get to. Very small. And we were doing it from like midnight to 4 a.m. It would take us.
And then someone had to drop it off at the school.
It would be us. Yeah. We did everything.
Self-distribution, nice.
We did hire like one cook, but yes, we did everything.
I was going to say, you weren't cooking, were you?
Yes. We did everything. We would.
Wow, from midnight? You would cook from midnight to 4?
Yes.
And you had a little kid at the time?
Yes.
Man, that's crazy.
My husband was home, during that time. They were all sleeping.
I'm gonna buy him a drink next time he comes in.
Yes.